Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to help you work on 7.4 homework. Since my AirPad is not working, I uploaded the answer key and I'm just going to explain on my answer key. So let's work on question number 2 here. We're given a graph and we want to write an equation for this. The equation that we want to write is a sinusoidal equation. The general form of sinusoidal equation is one of these two or both of them. Depends on what function you want to write, sine or cosine. So we need to find the c, a, b, and the d value in order to be able to write the equation. Let's first of all work on c value. C value is basically the sinusoidal axis of your graph. On a parent function of sine or cosine, sinusoidal axis is the horizontal middle of the line of the graph. So in this case, y equal to 0 or the x-axis basically is the sinusoidal axis of your function. Divides your function into two halves. The same is here. For this one, it's at y equal to 0. If I move the function up or down, then the sinusoidal function with the sinusoidal axis is also going to move up or down. So the c value will change. So basically the c value represents the vertical shift of your function. If you're moving up or down, the c value is going to change. So in this case, the first thing that I'm going to do here is to find the sinusoidal axis of this graph. And that is the middle horizontal line. And it's this one, which is again on the x-axis. That means in this case, we don't have a vertical shift. So the c value is 0. So that's the first thing that we found. Next, let's find a. A value is basically the amplitude of the function. Amplitude is the vertical distance between the highest point and the sinusoidal axis. So highest point is 7 and sinusoidal axis is at y equal to 0. So the distance is 7. You could also find the vertical distance between the lowest point and the sinusoidal axis. That's again 7. So we found a value. Next, we need to find the b value. To find the b value, first of all, we need to find the period of the function. How do we find the period? By looking at the graph. You need to find the horizontal distance between the two consecutive high points, like these two. So this distance. Or two consecutive low points. So these two low points, you need to find a distance between them. Or you can find the distance between two consecutive midpoints. Okay, so that's going to be this one and this one. Notice that in this case, consecutive midpoints are not these two. Why? Because these two are not repeating each other. We need to find 2 points that are repeating each other. Right after this point, function is going down. But after this point, function is going up. So they are not repeating each other. But this one is going to go down after this point. So these two are repeating each other. So our goal to find the period is to find 2 consecutive repeating points, like 2 high points, 2 low points, or 2 midpoints. That will give us the period of the function. So in this case, if I look at 2 consecutive high points from here to here, the distance is from 0 to 120. So the period of the function is 120. You could also find this distance, the distance between two midpoints, 30 to 150. It's again 120. Okay, so the period of the function in this case is 120. Now, what do I do with this? We have learned before that the period of a function is the period of the parent function, which is 360. You see, 360 divided by the b value. So in this case, we have the period, which is 120, and we are looking for the b value. So if I want to solve for b, I'm going to write b equal to 360 divided by period. So it will be 360 divided by 120 that we found. So b value is 3. We found the b value. The last thing that we need to find is d. The d-value depends on what kind of function you want to write. Do you want to write a sine or cosine? Basically, for these kind of problems, you can write infinite number of equations. You can write sine, cosine, positive or negative cosine, and with any phase shift that you want. We can choose one or two of them. I'm going to do one or two of them here for you. So I need to look for a d-value. If I want to write a sine function, I know that sine function always starts from a midpoint. You see, starts a midpoint and then goes up. So I'm going to look for a section of this graph that looks like this. And that's this one, for example. One section or one cycle that starts from a midpoint. So if I look at the parent function, a midpoint starts from 0 and 0. But if this function is shifted 30 to left, it's going to start from this point, which is at negative 30. So it's shifted left 30. The d-value basically represents the horizontal shift to left or to the right. We also call that phase shift. Okay, so in this case, the function is moved 30 to left, so I can say the d-value is negative 30. I could also look for another cycle. I could look at this part of the graph. This is another cycle, and starting from 90. So if I consider this is my base function, the function has been moved 90 to the right, so the d-value is 90. Okay, so if I consider this one as my base function, the equation of that is going to be 7 sine of 3x minus 90, because the c value is 0, and then I'm going to write a as 7, then sine of 3 times x minus d value, which was 90. So this could be the graph, the equation of my function. The 0 doesn't have to be written. It's going to be 7 sine of 3 x minus 90. You could also use the other section, the one that was shifted 30 to the left, and the equation would look like this. 0 plus 7 sine of 3 x plus 30, because it's x minus d, which is negative 30, so negative times negative will be positive 30. So that's if I want to write a sine function. What if I want to write a cosine function? We know that a cosine function always starts from a high point. So I'm going to look for a section of the graph that starts from a high point. One of them is this one. You see, this is a cosine function. Looks like this. Starts from a high point. Okay, where does this high point start from? From 0. That means in this case, d value is 0. So the function is going to be 0 plus 7 cosine of 3 times x minus 0, and that will be simplified to this. You could also write another cosine function if you consider this one as your first function. So this one starts from 120, so the t value is 120. It's going to be similar to this, except that here instead of x, you're going to write x minus 120. Okay, now let's work on number 6. This is our graph. First of all, we need to find the c value. That means we need to find the horizontal midline of the function, sinusoidal axis, which is this line. How do I find this midline? In order to find this, in this case, I'm going to see, look at the highest point. It's at 18, and the lowest point is at negative 2. So if I add these two and divide by 2, I will get the midline of them. That's how I do. So negative 2 plus 18, which is 16, divided by 2 is 8. So I can, in this case, I found the midline or sinusoidal axis. it's at 8. So take the highest and lowest point, add them together and divide by 2, you will get the midline. So in this case, I figured out that C was 8. Next, I need to find the A value or amplitude. Amplitude is the distance between the highest point and the midline. Highest point is 18 and midline is 8. So the distance between them is 10. You could also find the distance between lowest point and the midline. From -2 to 8 is 10. So the A value is 10. Then the B value. First, find the period of the function. Find the distance between two low points, for example. Between 4 and 24, the distance is 40. So this is the period of this function. You could also find the distance between two high points or two midpoints. Look, whatever is easier for you, that's going to be your reference to find the period. Okay, so the period is 40. Now, how do I find the B value? Divide 360 by that period. 360 by 40 is 9. How do I know if I need to divide 360 or 2 pi? Depends on what we are working on. In this case, your function is working with degrees, so that's why I use 360. If it was working with radian, I had to use 2 pi here. Okay, so anyway, here 360 divided by 40 is 9. That's the B value. I found B, and the last one is the D value that I need to find. So to find D value, let's say we want to write a sine function. Okay, so for sine function, I need to look for a section of the graph that starts from a midpoint. Let's look at this one. You see, this is one section that starts from a midpoint. Where does it start from? It starts from 14 here. So the D value is 14. So I can write my equation. Y equal to C, which is 8, plus A, which is 10, sine of B value, which was 9, and X minus D, which is 14. So that's if I want to write a sine function. Now, what if I want to write a cosine function? To find a cosine, I need to look for a function that starts from a high point. Okay, so let's look at this part. Starts from this point. This is a section that looks like a cosine. So starts from a high point, and that's 24 degrees. So I can write 8 plus 10 cosine of 9x minus 24. So this should be minus, not plus. I'm sorry, this is a mistake. Minus. Okay, so this is how it should look like. You could also write another cosine that starts from here. Okay, starts from this point, which is -16. So it's going to be 8 plus 10 cosine of 9x minus -16, which is x plus 16. As I said, you don't have only one unique answer. You have several different answers. You can write any of them that you want. Now let's work on number 8 here. In number 8, we are working with radian. How do I know that? Because on the x-axis, the angles are written in radian, like pi, 2 pi, 3 pi. So I know this is in radian. Okay, let's start working. On the graph, I need to find the sinusoidal axis. That's the horizontal midline. It's already written here, it's 5. But even if it was not written, I could easily find that 2 plus 8 is 10 and divided by 2 is 5. So that was how I could find the sinusoidal axis if it was not given. So that's the C value is equal to 5. Then I can find the A value, the vertical distance between the highest point, which is 8, and the sinusoidal axis. From 5 to 8, it's 3. That's the A value. Next, I need to find the B value. To find a p-value, first you need to find the period of the function. Two consecutive high points here can give you the period of the function. So this high point starts from negative pi, the other one starts from 7. So what is the distance between them? I'm going to subtract them. 7 pi minus negative pi is equal to 8 pi. Okay, so this is the period of the function. Now, to find the p-value, you're going to divide the period of the parent function. Parent function of sine or cosine is always 2 pi. Divide period of parent function by period of this function. 2 pi divided by 8 pi. The pi's will go away, and 2 and 8 can be simplified as 1 over 4. So the p-value is 1 over 4. Now, the last thing that I need to find is the d-value. Once again, that depends on what function you want to write. You want to write a sine function or a cosine. If I'm looking for a cosine function, so I need to look for a high point, and that's right here. I can consider this as the function that I am writing the equation for that, and starts from this point, which is at negative pi. So the d-value is negative pi. It's going to be x minus negative pi, which is plus pi. So the equation can be written as this. C is 5, A is 3, B is 1 over 4. Just replace everything that you have. And the D is negative pi. So it's going to be x plus negative pi, which is x plus pi. So that's cosine function. What if I want to write a sine function? If I want to find a sine function, I need to look for a midpoint. I can find this one. This is a midpoint. So the function was supposed to be like this, going up and the middle and down. The rest of the function is not graphed here, but I know that it's going to continue this way. So this is the sine function that I'm going to write the equation for that. Where is it starting from? It starts from 5 pi. So the d-value is 5 pi. Now the function can be written as this: 5 plus 3 sine of 1 over 4 x minus 5 pi. Okay, now let's find two more functions here. Imagine that we have sine function and I reflect this over the x-axis. That means the graph is going to look like this. If I reflect it over x-axis, the graph is going to look like this, upside down. In this case, the function will be y equal to negative sine of x. Or if I reflect the cosine function over the x-axis, it's going to look like this. This is the function of negative cosine of x. Okay, so let's find a negative sine and negative cosine here. If I want to find a negative sine, I need to look for a midpoint that goes down. Instead of going up, goes down. I can look at the graph and find this point. You see, this is a midpoint that goes down. So the function, the graph, would be like this. This is the graph of a negative sine function. Where is it starting from? It starts from pi. So the d-value is pi. How do I write the equation of that? This is how I write the equation. Y equal to 5. Instead of writing plus a, I write negative a. So I write a negative to say that this function is reflected over the x-axis. And then the rest is the same thing as before. A value is 3, b value is 1 over 4, x minus d value is pi, and I just write x minus d. How do I find a negative cosine here? To find a negative cosine, I need to look for a low point that is going to go up after that. So a low point could be this one. So where is it starting from? 3 pi, and it's going to be like this, which is similar to what we see here. Starts from a low point, then goes high, then goes back down. So it's going to be like this. So the d value is 3 pi, and the function is going to look like this. 5, instead of plus a, I write negative a because it's reflected over the x-axis. Cosine of b 1 over 4 x minus d value is 3 pi, so I write x minus 3 pi. Okay, so these were the examples that I wanted to work for you to help you solve the problem for 7.4. Have a great day.